Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Bertram, and thanks for joining me today on Good Ship Happens. We've had a lot of exciting things coming up just in the past week or two. I'll share more about that during this show today. Good Ship Happens. One thing that just came up that really, really makes me feel so good. Yes. Cruise lines, cruise ships do assist people when they're stranded. And this is just another wonderful example of a good ship happens. Carnival Cruise Line, their Carnival Dream was actually sailing. What they did was they actually helped rescue, their crew actually rescued 17 people stranded in the Belize Channel on Wednesday this past week. And the group's boat had been capsized. And the Carnival Dream was actually heading towards Cozumel, Mexico. And the ship's officers spotted the capsized boat and the group in distress. So what they did was the Carnival Dream captain actually, the officer and his crews immediately alerted the Belize Coast Guard, and then they lowered one of their shipboard tenders in the water in conjunction with the local Belize tenders, and they safely rescued all 17 people. And the good thing is, too, is each member of that group rescue were in good condition before being transferred with the Belize Coast Guard was coordinated. So that's just wonderful. And then, of course, Carnival Dream was able to actually then resume its voyage, continuing on to Cozumel. But once again, the ship had actually sailed from Galveston on May 14th for the special 6-night sailing, and actually did return yesterday, May 20th. And just great to hear news like that and share more than ever, because we need that more than ever, don't we? So once again, a beautiful example of how a cruise ship actually rescues people in a wonderful way too. Something else that's really, I think, amazing too is on May 18th was actually International Day for Maritime Women. It's actually called Happy International Day for Women in Maritime. And they celebrate this different ways, but we do have a lot of women that work in the maritime industry itself. I mean, a good example is with Celebrity Cruises on their bridge itself, as far as the bridge members. Unlike other cruise lines where the bridge members maybe under 5% that are women, females, maybe 2% with Celebrity Cruises on their bridge. I think 32% of their bridge staff are actually women. And once again, they still have the only American woman captain of a cruise line ship, Captain Kate McHugh. So that was just celebrated on May 18th. That's great too. So another good story news too. Something else that I think is really, really amazing too is we talk a lot about sustainability, and that's really a hot button in the cruise industry, because what they're doing is they really are working hard as far as going into liquefied natural gas as a way to operate their ships. And another wonderful example is actually MSC Foundation. MSC Foundation is part of the MSC Group. It's family owned. MSC Group actually has the MSC Container Shipping Company. They're, I think, the second or first largest container shipping company in the world, family owned. They also have their MSC Foundation, which gives back in diverse ways. They have MSC Cruises, which has been sailing now for quite a bit. And also they're starting a new cruise line launching this summer called Explorer Journeys, which is actually going to be more of a luxury cruise line. And the first ship, the Explorer One, will be debuting in July this year. But something came up with the MSC Foundation, which I thought was great news to share too, is MSC Cruises actually has an out island in the Bahamas. What they did was they actually negotiated a deal to lease that private island from the Bahamian government for 100 years. They actually spent $100 million to lease that island for 100 years. The actual island itself of the Bahamas was trash. It was a former manufacturing plant, and the plant just disbanded the island. And MSC had to actually tow away 1,500 tons of scrap metal. The sea life was dead. The trees were dead. And it was really in really bad shape. What they did was they actually invested $400 million to really get that island back up in better shape. They had to plant 75,000 trees. They had to tow away, like I said, the scrap metal, different things too. But what they did too is they've got MSC Foundation, which is part of the owner's company. They've got their MSC Foundation. What they did was they have a super coral program. And on May 11th, the MSC Foundation announced that their flagship super coral program in the Bahamas just recently hit a really significant milestone. They successfully did the installation of their first 3 coral trees at Ocean Cay MSC Marine Reserve. And the Super Coral program is a pioneering coral restoration program. They partner with global scientific advisors and research teams from Novo Southeastern University and also the University of Miami, which is great. And when it comes to coral restoration, people don't realize it, but it really is crucial to millions of people across the world. Why? Coral reefs are incredibly diverse ecosystems that are home to over 25% of marine species. Also, they provide food with creating diverse economic resources for billions of people. And they also protect coasts from erosion and storms. And unfortunately, sadly, most of the Earth's 800 reef-building coral species are now facing extinction this century. So coral restoration is definitely needed, urgently needed too, and the steps that MSC Foundations is doing now to take Ocean Cay's coral reefs into long-term endeavor is fantastic. And once again, as mentioned, in 2023, their goals include actually expanding this nursery to 13 trees capable of producing over 1,000 coral fragments per year. I think that's a wonderful story. So congratulations. Once again, something you don't know about, but it's very important because we don't think about how coral reefs are important or what they are, but they are. And to do this and grow this on their Ocean Cay MSC Marine Reserve, their private outline, which is gorgeous, is just another phenomenal example of how good ship happens in different ways. So once again, yes, you don't think about coral nursery, but yes, it is a true example of what they're doing to help sustain our environment too in different ways. And something else that came up too is we have a lot of new ships coming out, and one that actually was just christened on May 8th was the Oceana Vista. That's part of Oceana Cruises, and they've been in existence since, I think, 2002. And the naming ceremony of the Vista was taking place in Malta. And it was really, I think, a very emotional evening because what happened was Oceana Cruises co-founder is actually Frank Del Rio. He has been the CEO of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings for a while. He's going to be retiring end of June. But he was there at, of course, the christening naming ceremonies because Oceana Cruises is part of the Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings group too. And they mentioned that he brought a towel with him to wipe his eyes before he actually gave his final christening speech. And it's just wonderful because, once again, a beautiful example about how Oceana began. And this is actually the first new ship they built in like 11 years. It looked absolutely gorgeous. And once again, such a very, very emotional event that people shared in different dimensions as far as social media too, plus press releases, etc. And once again, Frank Del Rio and his family were there too. In fact, his son actually became president of Oceana Cruises. But Frank Del Rio is going to be retiring end of June, and Harry Summers moving into being the CEO, chairman of the whole Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings Corporation, which is great. So once again, just a wonderful, memorable christening ceremony too. Don't think about that, but once again, I know that he had Tal just kind of wiped his eyes before I gave his final christening speech too. And the godmother of the Oceana Vista was actually the godmother was Giada de Laurentiis, and she actually is a well-known I think she's a well-known chef, culinary expert too. But that was just a wonderful memory too to think about too, because once again, we don't think about this and having a christening come up on a new ship for them after 11 years, which is great. They're building more ships too, which is great too. Once again, as mentioned, the godmother was actually Giada De Laurentiis, and she's actually an Italian-American chef and award-winning food personality. She was chosen as the godmother of the ship, so she was there too. And once again, they christened the ship with a bottle of champagne on the bow, which is great. So once again, just a wonderful memory too. Something else too is, as far as ships, we have a lot of ships that are actually sailing from different areas in the U.S., which is great. And one that I mentioned previously was with MSC Cruises. Their MSC Meraviglia is now sailing year-round from the port of New York, which is great. And something else that just came up this week was Carnival Cruise Line. On Sunday, they just began their longest deployment yet. And this was from Norfolk, Virginia, with the Carnival Magic embarking on its first sailing for an extended season, which is great. And once again, you don't think about cruise lines sailing from Norfolk, Virginia, but they are. So once again, if you're interested in taking a cruise and maybe are hesitant about maybe flying, although flying is getting a little bit better, thank goodness for that, but not as many delays and cancellations and lost luggage. But once again, too, is we've got more options as far as sailing out of U.S. ports than ever before. And like I said, with the Carnival Magic, she's going to be sailing on 26 different sailings, ranging from 4 to 10 days through October 27 this year. And as mentioned, the captain mentioned, it's really wonderful to be back in Norfolk. And the ship will be stopping at ports in the Bahamas, such as Nassau, Half Moon Cay, Freeport, and Bimini, as well as Bermuda and Caribbean itineraries too, including San Juan, Puerto Rico, Amber Cove, which is part of the Dominican Republic, and Grand Turk. And her first cruise was actually a week-long trip to Nassau, Bimini, and Freeport. So once again, that's just a wonderful thing that you've got more options as far as ships departing from the United States of the America too. Also, Alaska cruise season is going very well. We've got a lot of ships sailing, and once again, there too, if you're looking for maybe Alaskan cruise, you can actually sail out of Seattle, yes, or go up to Vancouver, which is beautiful too. Vancouver is about 3 hours away by transportation as far as from Seattle. I've done that too, but once again, Alaska is a shorter season, but it's a beautiful way to really experience the world because you can see glaciers and wildlife and whales and polar bears, different things too. So once again, the Alaska cruise season just kicked off this month and goes through the first part of September. Then the cruise ships pull out of there because it's too cold to sail. But once again, keep that in mind because it can be a very life-changing experience. It was for me. I want to go back to Alaska too. It was really great too. Something else that just came up too is Atlas Ocean Voyages. They've got a new ship, and it's their World Voyager. She's actually going to be debuting this November, which is great. And it is their third vessel in their Explorer class expedition fleet, and she will be debuting, which is great, this November. And once again, it's really a wonderful cruise line. They actually officially started in summer of 2021. Right, we're still going through the ends of the coronavirus situation, but they successfully started, didn't go at full capacity. Once again, very fantastic cruise line, and their third ship, the third vessel in their Explorer class expedition fleet, is going to be sailing now from November this year, 2023, and they've got their expedition type ships. Once again, very luxury level, etc. And it's actually beautiful. I haven't really seen it myself too, but I've written about it. So once again, that's just a fun thing to share with people too, because you don't know about the different options out there. That I'll be sharing on later on is with Lindblad Expeditions. They've actually been sailing for 50 years, which is fantastic too. I'll share more about that later on in my show. But once again, a lot of good things are going on in the industry, from the environment, sustainability, also with a cruise line rescuing people that were in a capsized boat, rescuing 17 people, getting them safely, which is fantastic. Mark, did you have any questions for me or not?
Hey, I was actually just reading about a gentleman that has made a living after having worked on a cruise ship, and now he's making a living as a YouTuber. So this gentleman's name is Jay Alexander. He is with something called The Ship Life, and was worked on a cruise ship. And definitely he now takes around 20 cruises a year and works on his channel full time. So as his quote that I read in the article says, "My work is literally vacation," he says, adding that the hardest part is finding a balance. So he was not expecting this to happen. He was originally a kid from the south side of Chicago, and he didn't go to college, and he always wanted to travel as a kid, but his parents never had the money to do it. And back in high school, he became a professional break dancer and ended up working for the Harlem Globetrotters for 6 years, first as a dancer and eventually as an international tour manager. And that's when he got the taste of traveling and knew it was what he wanted to do. And he realized working for a giant corporate company wasn't for him, so he left. And after that, he was an Uber driver and just trying to make it in the entertainment industry. And a gentleman came, person that he knew, worked for the Norwegian Cruise Line, and told him that they just happened to be looking for an African American hip hop dancer. So next thing he knew, he's in a room with a bunch of Broadway types performing on a cruise ship. Podcasting was rising at the time, so one day he took his iPhone 6 into his room and proceeded to sat on some books and started talking about what it was like his first day working on a cruise ship. So he figured maybe get 100 views on YouTube. He woke up the next morning and it had almost 30,000 views. So he just kept on doing it and did a tour of his room, the crew bar, larger cabins and officer cabins, and broke down how much money you can make. And the channel just kept growing and growing. And after a while, while doing Uber in between cruise contract, he was making some nice side money with Google AdSense on his YouTube videos. And eventually, now it seems like he's just traveling and not necessarily working for the cruise ship, but he is doing some things and some observations of some of the things that takes place on cruise ships, including somebody that did something really silly and all in that space. And that's one of the things that I'll bring up because, sometimes when you're on a cruise ship, you think that you are bolder than you need to be. And we do know that there are people that are stunt risk takers and people that want to do risk and all in those kind of lines. So I don't know if you have seen this, but this was actually on his video. But there was apparently somebody that on one of those lovely cruise ships was deciding that they wanted to climb up the side between cabins and all in that space. So this is from his particular ship site and all of that, and this is what he reported. So let's check it out and see what was going on in this one that the Ship Life put out there and all in that space. So I'll bring it up and all along those lines, and we'll see what's going on in this particular case as we learn more about the Ship Life.
So as you can see, these young men and women here were playing a very dangerous game when they should have been playing chess or something. Now, there isn't a lot of context available on this particular situation. It just looks like there were some teenagers that decided to climb up from one level of a balcony up to another one to collect something. Now, according to some articles, they're saying that it was like I don't know, an AirPod piece or something like that was delivered to somebody. However, it does not matter. To me, it's personally irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that the teenager did climb up to the balcony when they could have either gone to the other side and used the stairs, or they could have knocked on the door to whoever passenger is staying in that particular area. Regardless of how you slice it, it is a very dangerous situation. Potentially, that is. By the way, just FYI, all of this took place on board the Carnival Mardi Gras cruise ship, which is my favorite cruise ship of all time. roughly around mid-April, even though this video is starting to kind of now go viral here in May. Now, like I brought up at the beginning of the video, the big worry is not the situation in question that you saw in the video clip, but the possibility of what you would call repeat offenders. You see over in this balcony that you saw in the video clip, if they were to fall, yeah, they could sustain some injuries like maybe a broken ankle or a sprained ankle or a broken leg at the most. However, on other cruise ships, and there are different designs for cruise ships, there could be a situation where they don't have that little area where they could fall down over to. For example, back in 2019 on board Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas, there was a 16-year-old kid that decided to go from one balcony to the other one because he was allegedly locked out of said balcony. He tried to get over, he fell down, and unfortunately, he passed away due to his injuries. Now, if you want me to be honest with all of you, give me a second, let me get down here. You want me to be honest with all of you, I think situations like this should be punished to the fullest extent of whatever it could be punished to. If that includes a banning, fine. If that includes a fine of, well, Carnival said $500, then fine, so be it, because they are definitely breaking some policy rules. I say this because if you have a situation where, let's say, for example, somebody decides to do this again, and then somebody does it again and again and again, and it's not punished to the point to where it deters other people from doing it, then you can obviously see where the problem lies. It will continue to happen. Long story short, if you want to gamble and roll the dice, or, well, try your luck by playing slot machines or whatever it is with life, then so be it. It's your prerogative. However, understand that should something happen, it's going to fall on the passenger, because we all know that if something had happened, whether it be the parents or any lawyer in this particular case, they would try to sue Carnival Cruise Line and say that it was their fault somehow, even though the negligence falls on the passenger, in this case, the teenage boy. So I think at the end of the day, caution should, of course, be had. Parents, just keep an eye on your kids. We can't watch every single child of ours 24/7. We know that. On a cruise ship, things should be monitored. And, well, in life, things are definitely going to happen. I always tell people we live in the real world. Things are going to happen. If we can avoid it, then, of course, that would obviously be for the best. But, of course, let me know your thoughts on this situation in the comment section below.
So
You
that
made
was
some
a
good
little
points because once again, I mean, people just don't think.
right.
And the point is, you could fall off a ship and immediately pass away, like the gentleman did on the example he mentioned with Harmony of the Seas. That's horrible. But the point is, even with those kids trying to climb up to get something, just go back inside the and knock on the door and get whatever you need. That's just plain stupidity. They don't think about it because once again, people can fall off ships and pass away.
Yeah, totally. And one thing we brought up, not on that one, but another one is one of the shorts, and I'm gonna see if I can bring that one up, is when you have gone on cruises, a lot of times we don't think about the fact that there are a number of folks, including young folks, that are on the cruises as well. And sometimes I think that people are excited that they are able to bring their young ones on and all in that space. So this is a case of somebody actually trying to help a young baby, because yes, even babies are allowed on the cruises as well, and all in that space. So I'm going to bring up this particular video where they are trying to help the young baby go to where it belongs, and all in that space. So definitely, there are even young ones that come on to these things as well. So I'm going to see if I can't bring this up. And this was from one of the Ship Life ones as well. But there was a young baby, and it does look like the folks were trying to help the young baby find its parents, just like you would at a circus or any other thing along those lines. So definitely this is a case of a young baby being lost. And one of the things that they're saying is if you're on a cruise and find a lost baby outside screaming and crying, then maybe you need to try to find a way, as these people were, to help the baby get to its parents. But this is a little bit of what was going on. I can bring it back.
Advice. If you're going
Okay.
to cruise with your family, please keep an eye on your kids. Believe it or not, bad things can still happen to them even on a cruise ship.
Puff, you're on a cruise and find a little boy outside screaming
Where
and
you come
crying.
from? Where's your room? Where your room? Show me where your room is. Yeah, he was just outside, so I don't know. I told him I was going. You said it was this one or which one? How they leave their baby and they don't know?
Oh, okay. You don't remember also?
I don't think so.
Let me see
He's
your...
scared.
Hello, can I see your bracelet? This is so cute. Can I see? What is your name?
So let me offer a little piece of advice. If you're going to go on a cruise ship with your family, please keep an eye on your kids. Believe it or not, bad things can still happen to them even on a cruise ship.
Puff, you're on a cruise and find a little boy.
Like I said, that's just incredible too that they would find a little baby and try to find the baby's home so that they can get it to its parents. But definitely that is one of the things that I saw. And then the other thing that I was really curious about, and this is not so much a video, but there was another article that I saw, and I think it was in Cruise Fever, and they were talking about some of the things that we do know that good ship happens, but sometimes there are rookie mistakes, if I can use the sports analogy, that people make when they go on to ships because they're not thinking about the hidden fees. So one of the things that they mentioned on this particular article was ATM fees, because apparently forgetting to bring extra cash can be costly on a cruise, with the ATM machines charging fees that will range from $5 to $8 per transaction on top of what the bank already charges you. So apparently there are additional ATM fees on certain ports and certain ships. And if you need cash for a day in port or to tip the crew a few extra dollars, you can apparently avoid ATM fees on cruise ships with a handy tip on the different sites that help you get around those and everything. And I'm sure you probably know some as well. And then they were also talking about spa products, because a lot of people love getting those spas, and getting a massage is a great way to get pampered. But apparently, and I think I mentioned this before, I know the artists do hard sales, but apparently the spa people also do hard sales, because one of the people was saying that after one of their massages, they tried to sell them a brush that improves circulation for $60 and a 3-pack of bad treatments for another $160. So if you're interested in purchasing these products, order them online after you get home for a fraction of the cost. That same $60 brush that they were offered, they found online for under $20. And apparently there's a popular game called Cash Cube, and that's one of those kind of circus type games, or kind of games that can be tricky and all in that space. So that apparently is not easy to win as people think it is. And then they were also saying that rookie cruise people need to understand the size and sales cards, because it's easy to overspend on a cruise ship, since it's 100% cashless, except for the casinos. And they had a friend that took a cruise and attended a skin seminar on board, and after hearing how great the product was, she came back to her cabin with 2 tiny makeup bottles. What she failed to realize was that her credit card had been charged $70, because using your cabin card is just like using your credit or debit card. And they were also talking about the cell phone roaming charges, because some folks are like, hey, I'm going to be on this trip and I'll just snap a picture for my Facebook or my YouTube. And apparently at $15 per MB, I think that's megabyte, logging on to Facebook and uploading one picture can cost anywhere from $20 to $30. So you have to be careful of that. And they were also saying to be careful of something called pull tabs, because before shows on some cruise lines, the crew will walk around selling strips of pull tabs where you could win $500 or more. And these strips offer some of the worst odds, but yet cruisers can't raise their hands fast enough to buy them, because you're sitting in your seat, you're waiting for the show to start. So you're basically a captive audience and all of that. And I know you talked about shore excursions as well, and they were saying that sometimes the third-party shore excursions can be cheaper than the actual ship shore excursions. So sometimes that might be something that folks might want to consider. And they were also saying the drink packages, so not taking advantages of drink packages and cards that cruise lines offer, can end up costing you a lot more money by the end of your cruise, because many offer drink packages for non-alcoholic beverages, because apparently Princess Cruises sells an unlimited coffee and soda package for $19.99 per day. It includes all coffee, sodas, smoothies, mocktails, fresh juices, milkshakes, and more. If you get all that, that's not actually a bad price and everything. And then they are saying about future cruise certificates. Passengers who will cruise again on the same cruise line and don't purchase future cruise certificates on board is equivalent to throwing a $100 bill into the ocean. And the last one that they brought up, which I had not thought about, but we have talked about entertainment on the movies. And sometimes when you go on these movies, you're having all this fun and you're there with your family and friends or whoever you're there with and everything, maybe a significant other. And sometimes they're going to get you to watch a movie. why you're watching a movie on a cruise is beyond me. But apparently, the cruise line sometimes want $19.99 to watch some of the newer movies, and after spending $1,500 to $2,000 on your fare, do you really want to pay for it to watch a movie in your cabin? And if it's a movie you want to see, you can make the most of your time on board, as I just said, and just rent it for $4 to $5 through Amazon when you get home. But apparently, they do try to sometimes get you to spend roughly $20 on watching a movie on demand in your cruise. But you're on a cruise. Why are you watching a movie? That's beyond me. But that's just
But the thing is, if you're watching a movie in the stateroom, that's different. I mean, they usually have, what I love too is cruise lines have, at their outdoor areas, they have big screens.
right.
And Princess Cruises really launched that, and they have movies that they show during the day and the evenings. And in the evenings, they actually, if you wasn't really that chilly, but they gave you a blanket. If you need a blanket, they had free popcorn, drinks, which is great.
Cool.
And you watch movies at night. It was great. I did that a couple nights too, but cruise lines do that. And usually if it's outdoors, they don't charge you anything. So just keep in mind where to do it.
And they did mention that. They did mention that a lot of times they will have those selections of movies and TV shows through in-state room programming, right. And that's no extra cost. So you can maybe even watch some of the classic TV shows or a classic movie or even a newer movie and everything. And I was not that familiar with the pull tab, so I wasn't sure if you were familiar with those or the other things that I mentioned, which seem to be two games of chance. Well, pull tabs is like trying to get people to do stuff, but the other one that they mentioned is something called a cash cube. They say the game in the casino goes by a number of names and looks super easy. The object is to line up a key and fit it into a box to win $100, $500, $1,000, $2,500, or even an iPad. But apparently the key almost always just misses because they were saying the game is rigged and controlled by a random number generator. So
it could be. I'm not a big casino person. I walk through the casino, get to another place. I'm not. And the thing is, in my case, I'm not a gambler. I mean, I'd rather buy something than just waste money. And in my case, with my success playing in the casinos, it'd be better to just throw the dollar bills off in the ocean. You know, I mean, I would agree with you on that too. Exactly. But the point is, with shore excursions, that's a good point too, because once again, especially when cruise and cruise lines were starting back, they did require that you had to take, if you want to get off the ship, you had to take shore excursions that the cruise lines offered. But it was a safe security measure they were doing just for safety, health reasons too. Yeah, I've done it both ways. The one fun one I did was a long time ago. I was in Jamaica.
Oh, cool!
And wound up getting off the ship and went with some friends. My husband, ex-husband, past husband. He wasn't feeling good that day, so we got off the ship and we're trying to decide what to do. My friend's been to Jamaica a couple of times. We actually found this taxi driver, Owen White, is a former Jamaican cop.
Oh, wow.
Policeman, former. Guess whose house he took us? Beautiful areas, which is great. We felt very safe because here we are with a former policeman. You know, I mean, just wonderful person. And he knew all the housekeepers. And guess whose house he took us to?
Whose house did he take you to?
In Jamaica?
Bob Marley.
No, he took us to Mick Jagger's house.
Mick Jagger's house. Wow.
Yes. We couldn't touch anything, but we were at Mick Jagger's house in Jamaica. It's like, oh my God, how cool is what? And his name was Owen White. People call him Whitey. And I got his phone number because when I was working with my family's agency, if I had clients that were going down to Jamaica on a cruise, I just say, hey, call him up. He can take you different places, which is great too. But that was kind of a fun thing because sometimes, I mean, you know, you want to be careful as far as where you're going. In this case, we felt safe because he's a former policeman. But once again, it goes back to it's good to see what shore excursions are available with the cruise lines. Because once again, too, if you do something separately on your own and you don't make it in time, the ship leaves and you're messed up.
Yep. And I did hear that. I think there was a recent case of somebody that got lost on the ship and then they found them later on or something along those lines. But yes, that is a risk that you run into and everything. What is some of the most unusual things that you said? Because I do remember on the one cruise I went to, we stopped at a area bar/restaurant, and I remember that literally as I was preparing to have my meal, it might have been a burger or something like that, I looked down and there was a gecko that was over there, probably wondering why I was there and what was going on, because he was literally staring at me as I was staring at him. But definitely was sitting there. It was either a gecko or an iguana, but it was definitely animal of that nature and everything. And I'm sure it was going like, what are all you tourists doing here? I was actually minding my own business and maybe getting a little bit of stray food from the restaurant, and then all you tourists
Right.
interrupted my quiet time. But
Well,
definitely,
sometimes I've seen those with the cruise lines. They do such a great job with their private islands. I mentioned Ocean Cay, MSC Marine Reserve, and them actually building the coral reef right there too. But what's fun is it's a beautiful island. They actually spent $400 million to restore it. What I like about it's beautiful. They had to rebuild. They planted 75,000 trees.
well,
They had to get rid of the things that were left on the island too. But it's beautiful. So many places to go and see, which is great. And you can take the transportation. In certain areas, you actually could see little iguanas too, depending. I've seen it also at another island that's done by Norwegian Cruise Line, Great Stirrup Cay. But sometimes you will see little animals right there, but they're kind of staying in their own places. But it's kind of funny where you mention eating in a restaurant and you see maybe
see a little animal there. And you had mentioned earlier about Norfolk, and that actually might be closer to me than getting to Florida and everything. So if I want to get back into the cruise space, maybe I can do that. So I'm going to bring up what the news media said about this particular notion and all in that space. I'm going to bring that up, and it's just a quick 30-second clip as talking about what you just talked about, which is Norfolk and what they are doing.
If you're into cruising, more options are on the way. Today, Norfolk and Carnival announced a big expansion. Next year, Carnival will double the number of sailings it offers from the Mermaid City. The ship will be available more of the year as well, from May through October. This is the latest step in a plan for Carnival to offer cruises from Norfolk year-round by 2025.
Yep. So
because like I said, they're really building up a lot of places to sail out from the U.S., which is great, and it gives you options. One thing that came up too is my friend, I've been writing for my friend Jeff for 23 years, but he's working on an article. But he asked me and other people, and another person works from full time is as far as what you can see is, are there any cruise lines that would go through the Great Lakes? There are. Mm-hmm. And American Queen Voyages does that, which is great and fantastic. What they do is I got a chance to see one of their ships. They had actually taken over these 3 ships from other company they bought. That happened right before the coronavirus hit. Had a chance to redo the ships. They've got 3 expedition type ships, and that's one of the ones that they started sailing from Chicago Navy Pier last May. And she was sailing through the Great Lakes up to Canada, which is great, and then sailing back. And they do that, of course, during the summertime period. So that was one I mentioned to my friend Jeff, as far as an article he's working on himself too, which is great. So once again, you've got different options out there.
And you mentioned earlier about going and wanting to go on a Alaska cruise. And one of the things that I had seen was that those are very popular, but you apparently have to pack it differently for a Alaskan cruise than you do for a Caribbean cruise, because we do know you're going to the Caribbean, you're probably going to a hotter weather climate and all in that space, and the weather can be a little tricky when you're going to Alaska, because it might be cold one day and then warm the next. So just wondering if you remember when you went on that trip, how you packed, and if you have any advice for those that are thinking about doing a Alaskan cruise, because one of the things I've heard is that you might need to dress a little bit more casual, and you definitely might want to do some layering because of the nature of the weather. But I definitely didn't know your thoughts, and they were also saying that flip-flops probably won't be on your go-to list on a cruise there and everything. But definitely you've been on one of these trips, and I think you said you want to go again. So what fashion tips would you give to folks that are thinking about going to a Alaskan cruise?
Definitely good points, because in my case, I took a lot of clothes. I wanted to layer. Mm-hmm. And I was very fortunate. I did it, I think it was September 9th of 1997 when I did my Alaskan cruise. And I took a lot of clothes to layer, but in my case, the weather turned out so perfectly that half the clothes I brought I didn't need. But I still, put jackets and things on to be safe, because when I did that White Pass Railroad trip, we went up like 1,000 feet up at least. It's beautiful. And once again, we're outside getting close to the glaciers. That was beautiful too. Once again, you just had to dress warmly, but just layer things, and of course wear sensible shoes, things like that too. But it's gorgeous. Once again, definitely layer clothes, bring different clothes to wear to layer up if you need to, because you don't know about the weather. In my case, it worked out so perfectly. The weather that week was actually warmer than normal, where the previous weeks they had a lot of rain and things too. So I just kind of lucked out for my cruise. Once again, just take different kind of clothes to wear, fleece type things, which is great too. Sweaters and things to add on, take them with you when you get off the ship, because you don't know. And also, again, too, it kind of depends on the shore excursion you're going to be doing. I had a friend that they did a flight seeing tour, which is fantastic. I didn't do that, but it was, of course, a little chilly. Like I said, getting off in Skagway, just walking around was gorgeous. And doing the White Pass Railroad trip was fantastic. And then different places to go and see and visit too, which is fantastic. But it's so beautiful. And once again, if you really want to see beautiful nature, it's just a great way to see nature in different ways.
That sounds like it. Well, the publication Cruise Fever, I had mentioned them earlier and everything, but apparently they gave some tips if you are booking a cruise, and they said that there are 15 things you should do, and I'll mention these 15 things and see if you agree with them or if there's things that you would add. But they said to definitely check that info, make sure the information in your booking is correct. Everything from the spelling of the names on the booking to the cruise dates are easy to overlook, but it's a good time to make sure it's all correct to save you some frustration later on. They also said to mark your calendar with important reminders. This is something that apparently they do immediately after they book a cruise, because you don't want the final payment date to sneak up on you or pass by without remembering to settle it. So definitely do that if you are doing the payment plan variation. And said get your account on the cruise line's website or app. If you don't already have an account with the cruise line, you should get one as soon as you can. Even if you're booking through a travel agent or a third-party website, you should have an account you can check out directly on the cruise line's website. They also said add your booking extras, and we've talked about that, whether if you're going to want Wi-Fi, spa treatment, or drink pack on the ship. This is a good time to add these to your reservations. They also said to check the airfare, and I know that we are definitely doing good ship happens, but we got to make sure that other things are happening as well, including the airfare that you might be going with and all that. So if you don't live within driving distance of the cruise port, you will want to check on flights right away, because the longer you wait to book a flight, the more chances that the costs are going to go up. So you got to tie that into what you are doing. And they were suggesting going through price trackers like Kayak or Google flight prices alerts to stay on top of any fluctuation. They also said look at the hotels near the cruise port for a pre-cruise hotel. So apparently there are some hotels that have relationships with the different cruise ships. So it's definitely a good time to check out the hotels near the cruise port, because you can find hotels with free shuttle services to the cruise port in certain areas like Miami and Port Canaveral. There are many hotels that provide extra services for cruise travelers. So you might even get a discount or other kind of benefits. And then they said plan your transfers on top of getting a flight and hotel. You will also want to consider how you will get to the cruise port from the airport and vice versa. So if you're going to use a hotel shuttle service to the port, you can look at rideshare prices or book a private car for transportation. And then they were saying add your cruise to a price alert program for price drops, because you never can tell, there might be a price drop, and make sure that all your documentation is up to date. Really, this should be done before you even book, or as you don't want to be waiting for a passport to come in the mall when your cruise date is rapidly drawing nearer. But this is still a good time to at least double check and make sure your documentation is current, because remember, your passport cannot expire within 6 months of your cruise dates.
Right.
Passport offices are pretty backed up right now as well. So they recently visited their local office, and they said the current wait time was 10 to 13 weeks for renewal. So if you're planning to go on that trip, you might need to do it now, because apparently they got a deep wait list. And they also said consider purchasing travel insurance to protect yourself against any unforeseen circumstances that may disrupt your travel plans or require medical assistance during the trip. So that was some of the guys. They also said, this is an important one, get that time off work. This should happen before you book a cruise, but it depends on your boss. When asking for time off work, remember to take into account extra days for that pre-cruise hotel and post-cruise hotel if you decide to go that route. So definitely, if you're going to go on a cruise that might take 2 or 3 weeks, you might want to let your boss know that, and everything is done. You have a funny story about that and all in that space. And then inform your bank and credit card company. Start getting your packing list together and making sure that you are all packed, and do research on each port of call Share your itinerary with a trusted contact. And bottom line, remember that these steps may vary depending on the cruise lines, the itinerary, and the personal preference. The story I was going to share with you is I told you I've only been on one cruise in my life, even though there was talk of going with my grandmother when she was living and everything. It just didn't come to fruition. And maybe I'll do another one. I think I might have done some of those river type deals in New York and everything. But in terms of a actual physical cruise, I can only remember of one. But it does seem to me I did like one of those river type deals in New York or
Right.
something along those lines many years ago and all in that space. But the one cruise I was around Christmas time, it was the holiday time. So I was already off from work, particularly the cultural arts centers that I work at and everything. But they did not know I was going on the cruise. So I literally called them because I was so excited to be on the cruise. I was there with a dear friend. And literally I called them and I was like, hey, guess what? I'm in Aruba or Puerto Rico or wherever. I think that was the Puerto Rico. Yeah, I think we were going to Puerto Rico, Grand Turks, and the British and one of the Virgin Islands. But yeah, they were a little bit shocked that I had gone on that cruise because, like I said, I have definitely been on vacations, but there is a conversation that goes on oftentimes about I don't do enough vacation, and so they were pleasantly surprised that I was on a cruise, but they were going like, "You can tell us you were going on a cruise. Did we give you permission?" I'm like, it really wasn't y'all's business, but I'm calling you to let y'all know I'm having a good time, and I'll tell you more about it when I get back to the said destination of home and everything. But yeah, I just decided to call them and surprise them with letting them know that I was on a cruise that had been planned by a friend of mine and all in that space. But yeah, I think they were a little shocked that I had gone on that cruise.
Right. How funny. But once again, too, it goes back to different planning things too. Normally, well, especially when all the meltdown that came up, last year in December with airlines and Southwest Airlines, their issues was really, really sad. Once again, too, it's usually better, especially now, if it can go down a day before the ship departs, this might be better. In my case, too, having insurance is very, very, I always buy insurance, always. And when I did my cruise last year, I was actually, my flight, on the flight coming back, because I did an 8-night cruise, the flight coming back wasn't until 5:45. I couldn't find anything earlier, okay? What I did was I got off the ship, and I did do a post-cruise tour in Port Everglades, which is great. The Everglades, which is gorgeous. It was fantastic. I lived down there for a while, but hadn't really seen the Everglades itself because they had the airboats, which is great. And they took us to the sanctuary right across after we were done. Fantastic. Got on the plane early. We go to the runway, and they were on the runway for a while. Finally, the flight attendant comes on and says, well, we're delayed for an hour. And I had a connecting flight. There were no nonstop flights. So we finally take off an hour later. I started worrying about my connecting flight. I finally called the flight attendant. So what I do when the flight lands, just get off the flight. Well, the problem is people don't let you off the flight first. They tried, they don't do it. They don't let you off the flights. I finally got the flight with my carry-on bag. It's like 9 o'clock. I get a text message from the airline that, we put you on a flight the next morning. I go to the gate. The flight had just taken off. I missed the flight by 5 minutes. And they just said, well, here's an app. Find a hotel. It wasn't my fault they left an hour late. Seriously, because they're the ones that did the connecting flight for me. I didn't pick and choose. But the point is, I asked a couple different gate agents. Oh, just here's an app. Find a hotel. I found a hotel myself, got the hotel 11 o'clock at night, and checked in. I got up at 3:30 to get repacked to get back to the airport. They have free shuttle service. Get there by 4:30. My flight took off okay. I didn't get my A boarding first for Southwest. I got a B, but I got on the flight and came back to the hotel. Cost me $109. And the airline wasn't going to do anything with me. That wasn't my fault. So anyway, I did file a claim with my insurance company, and within 3 weeks, they sent me a check, which is great. I also reached out to a key person at Southwest Airlines. She said, Cindy, they should have covered your airfare. Send me a receipt. I could refund it back. I thought, let me wait to the insurance, okay? So thank goodness the insurance company sent me a check within 3 weeks after filing the claims. They had me receipt everything that came up. And I just mentioned to this exec, I said, don't worry about it. I got reimbursed. I want to double dip. But the point is, it's good to have insurance more than ever because things come up. Your bags at one time, my bags can get rounded to my on time. And I boarded the ship. Okay, they rerouted my luggage, but thank goodness I went to Target, picked up some clothes, boarded the ship with my friend, and then we got on the ship. And the funny thing is, I got invited to the captain's table that first night, Saturday. Well, I found a cocktail dress, thank goodness for that. And they was on then Monday was our first port, St. Thomas, and they delivered my luggage. They used another airline carrier to get my luggage to St. Thomas from Chicago, and then I actually got my luggage on Monday morning. But thank goodness, I had some time to go to a couple stores, buy a couple things. So once again, what I learned a lot was make sure that you pack extra things in your carry-on bag as a backup plan, so you know.
Yeah, you definitely have those backup plans.
Right, but insurance is very important. I definitely believe in that. In fact, now cruise lines don't. Different insurance companies they actually have different insurance plans too. You can buy a year-long policy if you want to. Covers different things. Once again, just definitely keep in mind to make sure that you have insurance when you're traveling. It's more important than ever before.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be very much important to do that. And all along those lines, I've actually got another one of those ships that is out there and all in that space. And I'm going to bring up their tour because they gave us a virtual tour. Is MSC Europia, or I'm probably mispronouncing that.
Europia, yes.
So we'll bring that up and check out what they're all about as we get ready to wind down and all in that space. But it's a virtual tour. It looks like a very luxurious type hotel and all along those lines. So we'll bring this up and see what they have got going on in that luxurious kind of environment, because it definitely looks like it is a fun ship, and it definitely looks like it could be an exciting trip for those that want to take that particular trip. So we're going to wait and see if the computer will cooperate and all along those lines, and then we'll give them a virtual tour of this particular ship as well, because definitely it's always good when folks can have an idea of what they are going to expect should they be getting ready to go on a cruise and all in that space. While I'm waiting for that, are there any airlines that you prefer more than others in terms of them having a better relationship with the cruise lines? I mean, I do know that Virgin owns both an airline and a cruise ship, so Virgin probably has a nice relationship between the two, but I didn't know if there were any specific hotels or specific airlines that you think are better with their relationships with their various cruise partners.
It varies because once again, with Virgin Voyages, their airline is different. It's more international. In the case of Virgin Voyages, in fact, I mentioned that too, but they just launched their newest ship, the Resilient Lady, in Greece.
Oh, well.
This week, I've got a friend on board, actually, right now. He's on board the ship and showing photographs, which is great too. Once again, it kind of goes back to, everyone's got their personal choice for airlines. I mean, like Southwest, they've had issues last year. Now, I think that things kind of in better shape. Once again, just go back to who you prefer, and then also just make sure that you have a backup plan. Definitely do that, but also have insurance. But also, too, it goes back to if people like, American, that's fine. Delta. I mean, like Southwest. But once again, get a couple different choices. I think U.S. airlines are better than some of the other ones too. Sometimes you hear different mixed opinions about different other airlines too. Like
Cindy, along those same lines, and they mentioned it a little bit earlier with the phone being used as a camera and everything, and the charges that exist with the phone. So I was just wondering if people, because part of going on a cruise or any vacation is the tourism aspect, or the aspect of seeing things that you want to share with your family and friends about those trips and everything. So what advice do you give? Do you think that people should do less with their phones? Because it sounds like that can be very expensive. And if you're doing less with your phones, how easy is it to get either a disposable camera or film for a old-fashioned camera on a cruise and everything? So is it fairly easy to get the necessary supplies for a camera, or whether it be digital or a more traditional camera?
Yeah, good question, because I actually bought two new cameras just in the past year and a half. One's more of a like for videos. Haven't played with it too much, but the point is definitely check into Wi-Fi programs that the cruise lines sell.
Right.
So on their program on board the ship. And then when you get off the ship, of course, maybe put on airplane mode sometimes when you get different places, for instance, a great example is when St. Thomas, I was actually working with a business friend on something, and what I did was I went to a couple different restaurants to get to connect to their Wi-Fi to send emails. I was working on a project for him too. But, checking the Wi-Fi programs that the cruise lines have, we can use on board the ships too, which is important. And once again, too, is otherwise off the ship, definitely, I think just put on airplane mode so you don't get extra charges, and also check with your service provider too.
That makes sense, and I did find that the video. So as we get ready to head out, and I'll pop off after we watch the video, and you can do the closeout. But here's a little bit about MSC Europa as promised, and here is their virtual tour.
Yes, that's actually MSC Cruises' newest ship. She's going to be debuting on June this year. June 8th this year is actually her christening, and it's the MSC Eurobia. And beautiful ship is LNG powered, and also the godmother for the MSC Eurobia is actually going to be Sophia Loren. Yes, Sophia Loren has always been the godmother for the MSC cruise ships over the years. And I think this is maybe the 19th ship she's actually been the godmother of, but she's been godmother of all their ships, which is great too. And once again, it's their newest ship, and she'll be debuting. Her christening is going to take place in Copenhagen, Denmark. She'll be offering European cruises. So that's fantastic too. Once again, we've got a lot of really exciting news coming up as far as new cruise line ships coming up too. I mentioned that, of course, the Resilient Lady just started sailing in Greece, yes, which is fantastic. That is a third Virgin Voyages ship, and that's one that you have to be 18 years or older to actually sail on one of their ships, and it's really fantastic. Something else that is, I think, exciting too is with cruise lines, a lot of cruise lines do actually stop at Nassau. And what they did was they have actually been working for a 4-year redevelopment of the Nassau Cruise Port. And the first phase of this $300 million project is going to be open to the public on May 26th, coming up next week. So once again, a lot of good things happening when it comes to cruising. So please keep that in mind. And I'll be sharing more news about different things in upcoming episodes of Good Ship Happens. But once again, thanks for joining me today. I'm Cindy Bertram on Good Ship Happens. Until next week. Think positive things too. We've got a lot of things going on in the cruise industry too about that too. I'll be sharing more. Thanks for joining me today. Good Ship Happens. Thank you.
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Ahoy, Jennifer. Lovely to see you. I'm so excited we're partnering on Virgin Voyages.
Yeah, I'm really excited too, but I was thinking that maybe before we announce it, that we should decide on my official title at Virgin Voyages.
Yes, and I already have a few options for you.
Okay.
What about something catchy like, don't be fooled by the ship that I got. I'm now Jenny from the dock.
Okay.
Dame Jennifer Lopez.
Isn't there like a paperwork and like a sword involved?
Supreme Goddess of Mermaids.
You know what? Let's just tackle the title thing later. I'm just excited to share our gorgeous ships with the whole world.
Okay. Look, I'll brainstorm a little more and catch up soon on it. Mermaid in Manhattan?